It's the Kyle Hyman Show on Redeemer Radio.
This is Kyle Hyman, and joining us today to talk about how to throw a party and her book, Building the Benedict Option, a guide to gathering 2 or 3 together in his name, is Leah Libresco. Thanks for being here, Leah.
Thanks for having me on.
How would you describe the Benedict Option?
I think the Benedict Option is really, I like how Ross Douthat has described it, kind of a ratchet step where you try and take your life with God and with others and take one step further into thicker community, praying more with friends, bringing your time with God into more parts of your life.
What were your initial thoughts after reading the book, The Benedict Option?
Well, I definitely wanted to visit some of the people that Rod profiled who kind of live in thick, vibrant community. I've met folks who live in Hyattsville, Maryland, where the moms have a rosary group. And it's a place I'd consider living when my husband and I know that we'll live somewhere permanently. I'd love to visit the Italian village that, set up their own school. But my book's kind of focused on folks who might admire these examples that are a little bit in my situation where you don't actually have the ability in your career to settle down right now. You can't wait to have community till you can enter one of these thicker ones that are really established. So what will you do now in your apartment, in your job that only will last a year, to pray with others and to welcome them into your house?
And that seemed to be a lot of the critique of the Benedict Option when it came out, either maybe by people that didn't read it also, of kind of this lack of practicality and the need that we have to have Catholics in the world, not just secluded and throw all the Catholics on an island and say we're just going to kind of be on our own. Is that how you interpret it?
I think none of the Ben-Op groups that Rod profiles as people he admires are people who've withdrawn from the world. Uh-huh. They're people who stick out in the world, who are a little odd in just how devoted they are to God and each other, but they're not people who have given up on anyone else. And the closer we are to God, the less it's possible to give up on his people, because God never gives up on us.
What do you think it is about this particular time that calls for something like the Benedict Option?
Well, I think we're always called to love one another, and all that changes is the particular barriers in different times. For us now, people don't live in communities by default. You don't stay in a neighborhood. You don't live near your parents in a lot of cases. So that's one kind of way that our most basic communities just don't exist by default and require some kind of active effort. I think another thing that really strikes me is something Eve Tushnet has written about, which is how much we devalue all forms of sacrificial love that aren't marital or romantic, where people think it makes sense, obviously, that if your wife gets a new job across the country, your family has to work out what will happen because you have to all move together. But we think it's weird if you change jobs to live in the same city as a friend.
So what are you proposing as a solution or some practical steps that we can take as communities?
Well, I have a kind of a big range of things folks can do, from the very small and simple, which is just, whenever you see Christian friends you already have in the context in which you're already seeing them, don't part from them without praying. Make sure that your time with other people who love Christ includes an invitation to Christ to come in and enter into your friendship. So, that's not even scheduling anything new. That's just one thing to add when you see people you already love. Uh-huh. At the wilder end, I say have people over and celebrate the Feast of St. Thomas More by reading A Man for All Seasons aloud and then discussing it.
Uh-huh. So are these things that you were putting into practice before reading the Benedict Option, or are these things that you were inspired to start doing since then?
It's really a mix. And to be honest, Rob did so much blogging on the Benedict Option. There was so much discussion. There were fewer surprises in the actual book because he'd given a lot of his most beautiful examples to us as he thought them out.
I like how on the back here, somebody says, there are plenty of books and blogs and social media accounts dedicated to how to throw parties, even how to throw very Catholic parties. But this book will help you understand why to throw parties and why it's so important. It's so funny because until I had read that on the back, I wasn't really thinking of this as a party book. But
well, I'd say it's a beauty book, and that the more we enter into beauty, the more you rejoicing and ebullience and honestly rowdiness can become a natural reaction to it. And so I think there are a lot of ways to kind of make the beauty of what God has given us the center of a gathering, whether it's we had a night celebrating the Virgin Mary where we just invited everyone to come to our house, print out any pictures of Our Lady that they found particularly beautiful, bring prayers or hymns, and we just all share them pretty much, taking turns, sharing them, praying, singing together. It was a beauty-centered party, and obviously we got pretty excited doing it.
And so who are you inviting to these events?
Well, I invite folks I know. And then one of the nice things that when you have kind of gatherings like this, it becomes easier to invite a stranger to your house because you're inviting them into something you're already doing rather than going, "Hi, stranger, I barely know you, but I guess let's have coffee or dinner, but it's not a date, and we'll just try and entertain each other one-on-one," which I think it is a lot more intimidating. But It's easier for me when I already have stuff going on to meet someone at a book talk or meet a friend of a friend and go, I'm having folks over on Thursday. If you're free, come join us. We did a rosary walk for the new feast of Mary, Mother of the Church this year. And, we just had someone from Twitter who I mentioned it on Twitter, and then he came and found us in the park. And that was the first time I met him. And now I've seen him at more things, because that was how we met.
Would you consider yourself to be an extrovert?
Yes.
Okay. Is this easier for you as an extrovert? Because I imagine there's some people listening who might consider themselves to be more introverts that this sounds like a horror movie to them.
I think there are definitely projects I'd take on that an introvert wouldn't. But I do try and put a number of ways to gather folks that kind of don't put the spotlight on the host. And something like sharing the Marian prayers is one of those. The focus isn't on you, the host, to entertain everyone. Everyone's brought something to share. You can have a movie night with a great movie like Of Gods and Men about Trappist monks in Algeria, where you, the host, bring everyone in, sit them down, put out some snacks, turn on the movie. Folks will discuss it a bit naturally afterwards, but it's not your job to kind of keep the energy up. You have something else to sustain the energy, and I think that makes sense.
We're talking with Leah Libresco. The book is called Building the Benedict Option, a guide to gathering 2 or 3 together in his name. And you've mentioned a couple different events that you've done or hosted or organized. Could you just walk us through the process of either an event that you have done or an event that you could imagine doing in the future, the process of coming up with the idea, the planning, the inviting, and the whole kind of the broad range of it?
Sure. I'll give one that I've kind of done as a repeated event, which is having a spiritual reading book club, where what I do is I just kind of make a Google survey that has dates and books, because I don't really want to kind of pressure my friends into belonging to a book club where they have a chore to get through this month's book. I kind of encourage friends to only come when they're particularly interested in what I want to read.
Okay.
So I list a couple, shorter books that I think might be interesting to read and discuss, and some dates that I could open my house for it. And then I just post the link on Facebook and Twitter, or email it to some other friends who I think will be interested but aren't as active on social media. Encourage them to invite their own friends if they think they'd be interested, since anyone who wants to come discuss on the Incarnation is someone I want to have in my house.
Uh-huh.
And then once they all fill that out, I just take a look at what's the date most people are free. And then for that date, the people who are available, what do they want to read? I pick the book, I let everyone know. And then when they come over to the house that night, I've usually made dinner. I usually try and pick something to make, and I talk about reading recipes this way in the book that doesn't require me to be really busy right before it goes on the table so that I'm not distracted or feeling pulled in 2 directions, to the stove and to everyone else. We just sit down, people read aloud passages that particularly struck them. We chat for a while. And then, we pray evening prayer and have dessert, and then everyone goes home.
Why do you think that it's necessary to write a book like this in the first place? Why have we become so individualized, or making our own little families kind of this remote little island and not reaching out and having community?
Well, I think a lot of kind of organic communities have been kneecapped by things like pressures to move for jobs, zoning that makes neighborhoods unwalkable, that leads you not to encounter your neighbors, everyone being in cars all the time. But people are all, and this is kind of the nice thing for me with the book, everyone who picks up my book is made to love God and God's people. So I don't need to worry about who the book is relevant to. I know that this is everyone's vocation and that God will support us in seeking to know and care for each other. So then for me, the question is just, what's getting in the way of that? We long to love one another. What's in the way? And sometimes it is stuff like, man, I don't know how to find something I can cook that won't be too stressful. I'm like, I have some advice for that. I don't want to host an event where I have to, talk the whole time and like keep up the energy and it just all gets so small talky and stressful. I'm like, have a movie night, here are some good religious movies that can prompt some good discussion afterwards that are just something you can share. And that's really my focus, just giving folks, a couple tools to do what they're already made to do and long to do.
And so how have these events affected you?
I think one of the biggest ones for me is it leads me to love my friends more, including friends who I already like. But just the fact of seeing people again and again, gives you some of that storge affection, the affection just of fondness of this person is woven into my life and now I love them better for that. But it's also that, when you see people even casually, it gives you more room to be vulnerable with them. There are things that friends have told me or that I've told friends where I don't think it would have come up if I hadn't, seen them twice that month already and just had the chance to bring up a prayer request that was very personal in a way I might not have done online or anywhere else.
Is this the kind of thing that our churches should be organizing for people? Because I think that's kind of something people blame the church for, not having anything for young adults or for young families or anything like that. Or is this something that we as the laity need to take the responsibility to go out and make sure this kind of community is happening?
Well, to be honest, I think it's something the laity are likely to be better at, because there's something that's often just nicer about being in someone's home than being in a parish hall or being in, the parish classroom. There's a personality to having people over, that there's even a vulnerability that someone's in your house, they can see your bookshelves, they can see your medicine cabinet if they're peeking, right?
Yeah.
And that's a real intimacy. But I also think the laity running smaller events gives you more room to make them specific so that they're particularly attractive, rather than when the parish says, all right, young adults, we have wine and cheese and you can all mingle with each other and talk about how you're all young adults. Indeed, right? Young adults don't actually have that much in common with each other just because we're all the same age.
Right. Yeah, very forced. All right, what do you hope that people will get out of the book?
Well, honestly, what I hope is that folks will pick up the book, start reading it, and put it down and not finish it the first time they start reading it, because you're already going to do something. Whether it's a larger event or it's just a friend you haven't seen in person for a while and you feel kind of convicted just to go find them and see them and pray with them and just spend a quiet lunch together. Go do that. The book will be waiting for you when you come back.
I like that. All right. Well, where can people get a copy of it?
People can buy it on Amazon or through Ignatius Press, and you can see more about the book at buildingthebenedictoption.com.
buildingthebenedictoption.com. Great. Again, that is the name of the book, A Guide to Gathering Two or Three Together in His Name. And we've been talking with the author, Leah Libresco. Thank you so much, Leah, for joining us today and for sharing this with us. I think I'm going to have to put some of these things into practice. So thanks for the little kick in the back.
Thanks for having me on.